say is that the beginners will have some kind of problem in writing a complete ER diagram for any given problem. Like I said, maybe hotel management or a college database, or it could be a airline or a ticket booking kind of thing, any kind of booking or e-commerce kind of. So there are plenty of such problems available. And in fact, you need to do this for your mini project as well. See, it's not just for theory, you need to do it for your mini project. OK, so these are the guidelines suggested by me in order to take care of writing, how to write your ER diagram. So step 1. Step 1. Yeah, step 1 is what? Identify the strong and weak entity set. Of course, I've just jumped into step 1, assuming that you have understood the requirements. See, the requirements given by the client. Like I said, hotel management, that's one line or few words. Generally, your problem statement or the requirements may run in 2-3 pages also sometimes. In the exam, it may be 2-3 paragraphs. So they may explain certain kinds of the requirements being given so that you can take up and incorporate all these things in your ER diagram, right? So you have to decode the English statements given by the client in order to write your ER. So you have to map those requirements onto. So I have assumed that you have understood thoroughly the requirements. So once if you have understood, see, don't worry, I will just take a few examples also and then follow these steps so that you can adopt the same kind of strategy when you get a new problem. So step 1 is identify strong and weak entities. How to identify? That's a different question. I'll answer that later. OK, so simply I say identify the strong and weak from the requirements, but you may ask the question that how to identify, right? OK. Anyway, you need some common sense plus some knowledge about all these database concepts. Next step is to identify the relevant attributes. I'll underline this relevant. Don't worry about when you're talking about a particular entity, strong or weak, just concentrate only on that, only on that entity set, and don't worry about the other entities in your domain. See, you would have identified, say, 5 strong and 1 weak entity in step 1. Among these 5, pick one entity set, strong entity, and pick or identify the attributes. Attributes, nothing but the characteristic features of that particular entity. Don't worry about the rest of the 4. You can just hide, you can forget also. So, OK, so when I have 5, see, this is the mistake many students do it, or the beginners do it. They try to get a fear that, sir, what happens to my other entity sets? Don't worry about that. If I say student is an entity in college database, I will just worry about only student. I don't worry about faculty. I don't worry about subject. I don't worry about anybody else. Understood? So worry about only the entity set which you are talking about. Then shift to the next. Go to the 3rd, go to the 4th, go to the 5th. So when I say student, USN, name, date of birth, address, phone, email. See, all these are very, very relevant, very much relevant to student. I repeat my earlier example. Don't add an attribute for student entity set engine number. Engine number is not characterizing the student. It is as simple as that. OK, so always try to identify only the relevant attribute. Next step. Now repeat this. This is a loop actually. Step 2, relevant identify relevant for all strong and weak entity sets. See, I have not put all these things understood. So you have to Hello. Somebody is unmuted. Bhupanna. Bhupanna has to mute. Concentrate here. Okay, so identify the relationship sets. So once you finish identifying the relevant attribute for each of these strong and weak entity sets, now you identify. This is again a difficult job. Again, beginners, what they do, they put all permutations and combinations and show the relationship sets between the strong and weak entity sets. Now don't do that. Identify only the meaningful. You can just change this. Identify the meaningful relationship sets. You can just ask question yourself, does it make sense to have this relationship between these two or not, or between three or not? So if it makes sense, have it. If it doesn't make sense, drop it. So continue this process for all possible combinations of the strong and weak entity sets. 4 is cardinality ratio, 1:1, 1:many, many to many. And partial, total participation, all these constraints, cardinality, used to be written down on. Okay, and participation constraint, cardinality and participation constraint need to be written on your ER diagram, because now you have all entity sets, you have all relationships shown. Now you have shown the cardinality and participation constraints. Now it's very clear that partially my ER diagram is ready. Next, you can identify the abstractions. If it exists, is a relationship and has a relationship, generalization and aggregation. So try to identify these two. If you have some relevance for your problem, that yes, I can have this, then have it. Otherwise, drop it. No, don't worry about that. You have to have all this. It's not required that every ER diagram will have this, but if you can show that these things, that it exists and it makes sense, do it or go ahead. Okay, so this, of course, step 6, I can have, at one single go, ER diagram may not be ready. So you may have to refine this further by going through this ER diagram. Maybe version 2 you can have, and slight alterations you can do. Probably you would have forgotten some entity sets, strong or weak or whatever it is, or attributes you would have forgotten. Try to add all these things by going through this again and again. 2-3 iterations if you make, probably your ER will come to some stage where it makes a full-fledged kind of diagram. So this requires bit of experience, bit of knowledge about the requirements, whether you see whether all constraints have been met or put in the ER diagram on this. So this becomes, you follow this notation when you write your ER diagram. Strong entity set, you have a rectangular, single rectangular cross, weak double line, relationship, diamond. So like this, follow the follow the notations which has been prescribed by Navate, and that completes your ER diagram. So in the next session, that is tomorrow, we will go through some case studies. There are 4 case studies which you can see here. I'll show you even later on after this some exercises of answering my question, original question. How do we go about? So these case studies are, the ER diagrams are already given. So let's understand this and then apply these guidelines, all these steps for a new set of problems probably, and how to go about identifying the strong or weak, etc. So after going through all these things, probably you will come to a stage where you can write your own ER diagram for any new problem. So I'll try my level best to make sure that you can write your own. Okay, now any doubts? So let me just take the attendance.